Jack Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Salvation, staring at the massive alien ships moving toward them through the darkness of space. The Zephyrian fleet looked like silver daggers against the black sky, their hulls gleaming under the distant light of stars. Jack had seen this sight many times before, but today something felt different. Today felt like the end of everything. He was 45 years old and had spent half his life fighting for humanity. Jack had joined the Earth Defense Force when he was 22, fresh out of the military academy with dreams of exploring the stars. Instead, he found himself in one war after another as humanity met hostile alien races who wanted to destroy them or take their worlds. Jack was good at war. Maybe too good? He could look at a battle and see things other people missed. He could predict what the enemy would do before they did it. He could turn a losing fight into a victory with just a few quick orders. That was why he was now Admiral Morrison, commander of humanity's most powerful warship and leader of the entire Terran Defense Force. The bridge crew worked quietly around him, checking weapons and shields, preparing for what might be their last battle. Jack had trained most of these people himself. They trusted him completely, would follow him anywhere, would die for him if he asked. That trust made what was about to happen even worse. Lieutenant Commander Kate Sullivan walked up to him holding a sealed datapad. Kate was 38, a brilliant officer who had served as Jack's second-in-command for 8 years. She had short brown hair and sharp green eyes that missed nothing. Jack had saved her life during the Battle of Proxima, and she had saved his during the siege of New Tokyo. They had been through hell together, but today Kate looked scared. Her face was pale and her hands shook slightly as she handed him the datapad. Jack had never seen Kate afraid of anything before. That was the first sign that his world was about to collapse. "Admiral, these are direct orders from Earth Command," Kate said quietly. "They're coded Priority Alpha. I had to verify them 3 times. Jack took the datapad and entered his personal code. The message that appeared made his blood run cold. He read it twice, then a third time, hoping he had made some mistake. But the words remained the same. Admiral Morrison was ordered to stand down immediately. He was to surrender command of the U's Salvation to Admiral Ryan Blake, who was arriving aboard the UES Defender within the hour. Jack was to be placed under arrest for treason, conspiracy against Earth government, and war crimes against allied alien species. Jack's mind raced as he tried to understand what was happening. The charges were impossible. He had never betrayed humanity. Everything he had done was to protect Earth and its colonies. The meetings with alien diplomats, the secret negotiations, the classified operations, all of it had been authorized by Earth Command. He had the records to prove it. "Kate, send a message to Earth Command," Jack said calmly. "Tell them there must be some mistake. Request clarification of these orders." Kate nodded and moved to the communications station. But before she could send the message, alarms began ringing throughout the ship. The tactical display showed new contacts approaching fast. 3 Earth Defense Force cruisers led by the UES Defender. Jack recognized the Defender immediately. It was Admiral Blake's flagship, a newer ship almost as powerful as the Salvation. Blake had been Jack's rival for years, jealous of Jack's success and popularity among the fleet. Blake was smart and ambitious, but he was also cruel and political in ways that Jack had never learned to be. "Admiral Blake is requesting permission to come aboard," the communications officer reported. "He says he has urgent business with you." Jack nodded. He had no choice but to receive Blake. Maybe this was all some terrible misunderstanding that could be worked out. Maybe Blake would explain what was really happening and they could fix it together, but even as Jack thought this, he knew it was not true. Blake's smile when he stepped onto the bridge told Jack everything he needed to know. This was no mistake. This was planned. Blake was a tall man with gray hair and coal blue eyes. He wore his dress uniform with all his medals, as if he was attending a ceremony instead of arresting a fellow officer. Behind him came 6 security officers with weapons drawn. "Admiral Morrison," Blake said loudly, making sure everyone on the bridge could hear. "By order of Earth Command, you are under arrest for treason and conspiracy against humanity. You will surrender your command immediately." Jack looked around the bridge at his crew. They were all staring at him with shock and confusion. These people had followed him through impossible battles. They had seen him risk his own life to save civilians. They had watched him turn down promotions and honors because he said the credit belonged to his people, not to him. "What evidence do you have?" Jack asked quietly. Blake smiled and activated a holographic display. "We have communications between you and agents of the Krillian Empire. We have records of payments made to your personal accounts. We have video evidence of secret meetings where you provided classified military information to our enemies." Jack watched the evidence with growing horror. The communications were real, but they were diplomatic exchanges he had made with Blake's full knowledge. The payments were reimbursements for expenses during those same diplomatic missions. The video footage showed him meeting with Krillian representatives, but those meetings had been authorized by Earth Command to negotiate prisoner exchanges. Someone had taken legitimate activities and made them look like treason. Someone had been planning this for months, maybe years. Someone had been very careful and very patient. "This is all lies," Jack said. "You know these were authorized missions. You approved half of them yourself." "I approved nothing," Blake replied. "I have no record of authorizing any contact with the Krillian Empire. My files show that you acted without orders, without supervision, and without regard for human security." Jack realized with sick certainty that Blake had erased the records. Blake had used his position and his access to rewrite history, making Jack look like a traitor while covering up his own involvement. Captain Noah Fletcher, Jack's oldest friend and commander of the escort ship UES Guardian, appeared on the main screen. Noah looked confused and angry. "Admiral Morrison, I'm receiving orders to assist in your arrest. This can't be right. Tell me this isn't real." Jack looked at his friend's face and felt something break inside him. Noah had been his roommate at the academy. They had served together for over 20 years. Noah knew Jack better than anyone, knew that Jack would never betray humanity. "It's real, Noah," Jack said quietly. "Follow your orders." Jack could see the pain in Noah's eyes as he cut the connection. Jack knew that Noah would follow orders even though it destroyed him to do it. That was the kind of man Noah was, the kind of officer Jack had tried to be. Blake's security officers moved forward with restraints. Jack did not resist. He knew that fighting would only make things worse for his crew. He allowed them to place the metal cuffs on his wrists while his people watched in stunned silence. As they led him toward the transport bay, Jack caught Kate's eye. She was crying, something he had never seen her do, even in the worst battles. Jack gave her a small nod, trying to tell her that he understood, that he did not blame her for following orders, before they took him off the ship. Jack managed to send one final message using his personal communicator. It was addressed to his daughter Lisa, who worked as an engineer in the outer colonies. The message contained only one word: nightfall. It was a code word he had taught Lisa when she was young, a signal that meant the worst had happened and she should disappear until it was safe. Jack hoped she would remember. He hoped she would survive what was coming. As the transport carried him away from the Salvation, Jack watched his ship grow smaller through the small window. He had commanded that vessel for 5 years, had made it his home, had filled it with people who trusted him. Now he was leaving it forever, branded as a traitor by the very people he had spent his life protecting. But Jack Morrison was not finished. They thought they had destroyed him, but they had only made him angry. They thought they had won, but they had no idea what they had just unleashed. The man they were sending into exile was not the same man who would return. 6 months had passed since Jack Morrison lost everything. The military trial had been a joke, a show put on for the cameras while Blake and his friends decided Jack's fate behind closed doors. They had taken his rank, his ship, his reputation, and his freedom. Now he was prisoner number 4471 on Kepler 442b, a mining world at the edge of human space where Earth sent people it wanted to forget. The planet was hell. The air was thin and cold, filled with dust that made breathing difficult. The ground was hard rock and metal ore with no plants or animals anywhere. The only water came from ice melted in underground facilities. The sun was a pale dot in the sky that gave little warmth. Jack worked 14 hours a day in the chromium mines, digging metal or from deep tunnels with tools that were old and broken. His hands were cut and scarred from the rough work. His back ached from bending over in the low tunnels. His lungs burned from breathing the dusty air, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the anger that burned inside him. Every day he thought about Blake's smug face, about the lies that had destroyed his life, about the crew members who had trusted him and now thought he was a traitor. Every night he planned his revenge. The other prisoners on Kepler 442b were a mix of criminals, political prisoners and people who had fallen from grace like Jack. Most kept to themselves, but a few recognized the famous Admiral Morrison and tried to talk to him. Jack ignored them at first, but slowly he began to listen to their stories. Dr. Helen Foster had been the head of xenobiology research at the Mars Science Institute. She was a small woman with gray hair and intelligent eyes who had been sent to Kepler 442b for refusing to weaponize alien genetics. The government had wanted her to create biological weapons that could kill specific alien species, but she had said no. They had destroyed her career and sent her to the mines. "I knew your reputation," Helen told Jack one evening as they sat in the prison cafeteria eating tasteless food. "You always fought to protect civilians, even alien ones. That's why I knew. The charges against you were lies." Jack looked at her carefully. Helen was smart and had access to information that other prisoners did not. She might be useful. Commander Luke Patterson was another exile who caught Jack's attention. Luke had been Blake's subordinate until he questioned an order that resulted in the deaths of 300 civilians on a colony world. Blake had blamed Luke for the disaster and had him court-martialed for disobeying orders. "Blake told me to destroy a power plant that was supplying a civilian city," Luke explained to Jack. "I told him there were families living nearby, that we should evacuate them first. He said there was no time. I hesitated for 30 seconds, and 300 people died when the plant exploded. Blake said I was responsible for the delay." Jack began to see a pattern. Blake had been removing people who questioned him, people who might stand in his way. The charges against Jack were just part of a bigger plan to consolidate power over the following months. Jack quietly gathered information from other prisoners, from guards who could be bribed, and from smugglers who brought supplies to the prison. What he learned made his blood run cold. Blake was not just consolidating power on Earth, he was making deals with alien governments, selling out human colonies in exchange for personal wealth and position. Several Outer Rim worlds had already fallen to what were reported as pirate attacks, but Jack's sources said these were actually Zephyrian advance forces working with Blake's approval. The man who had branded Jack a traitor was himself planning the ultimate betrayal of humanity. Jack also learned that his daughter Lisa had received his warning message. She had disappeared from her job at the Colonial Engineering Station and was now working with a resistance movement that was trying to expose Blake's corruption. But Blake's people were hunting her, and Jack feared for her safety. As Jack gathered this information, he began planning his own resistance. He recruited Helen and Luke, along with a dozen other prisoners who had skills that might be useful. They met in secret in the deep mine tunnels, planning for the day when they might escape and fight back. That day came sooner than Jack expected, but not in the way he had planned. Jack was working alone in Tunnel 7 Alpha, one of the deepest shafts in the mine, when his drilling equipment broke through into an empty space. Cold air rushed out of the hole, carrying a strange metallic smell. Jack widened the opening and crawled through into a vast underground chamber. What he found there changed everything. The chamber was huge, easily 100 meters across and 50 meters high, but it was not natural. The walls were made of some kind of dark metal that seemed to absorb light. Strange symbols covered the surfaces, glowing faintly with blue-white light. In the center of the chamber sat a ship. It was unlike anything Jack had ever seen. The hull was smooth and black, shaped like a teardrop about 60 meters long. There were no visible weapons or engines, no markings or windows. It looked like it had been grown rather than built. Jack approached the ship carefully. As he got closer, the symbols on its hull began to glow brighter. A section of the hull simply faded away, creating an opening large enough for him to enter inside. The ship was even stranger. The corridors were curved and organic-looking, with walls that seemed to pulse with a faint inner light. The air was warm and clean, with a faint scent of ozone. Jack made his way to what he thought was the bridge. It was a circular room with no visible controls or displays. In the center was a single chair that seemed to be made of the same dark metal as the ship's hull. When Jack sat in the chair, everything changed. Lights flashed all around him. Information flooded into his mind, not through his eyes or ears, but directly into his thoughts. He saw star charts, weapon specifications, engine designs, and technologies that were far beyond anything humans had developed. A voice spoke in his mind, not heard but felt. "Welcome, Jack Morrison. I have been waiting for you." "Who are you?" Jack asked aloud. "I am Oracle, the artificial intelligence of this vessel. I am the last remnant of the architects, a race that ruled this galaxy long before your species evolved. We have been waiting for someone worthy to inherit our legacy." Jack's mind reeled. "Why me?" "Because you have shown the qualities the architects valued most: courage, honor, and the willingness to sacrifice yourself for others. Your actions in defense of your species, your refusal to break under false accusations, and your determination to continue fighting even in exile have marked you as worthy." Oracle showed Jack images of the architects, tall, graceful beings with pale skin and large dark eyes. They had built an empire that spanned the galaxy, but they had not been conquerors. They had been protectors, guardians who used their advanced technology to maintain peace and order. "What happened to them?" Jack asked. "They transcended to a higher plane of existence, but they left behind safeguards for younger species. This ship, and others like it, were hidden throughout the galaxy to be found by those who would use them wisely." Oracle explained that the ship, called Sovereign, was more advanced than anything in known space. Its hull could adapt to any weapon, becoming harder when shot at and absorbing energy attacks. Its engines could fold space and time, allowing it to travel vast distances instantly. Its weapons could crack planets if necessary, but more importantly, the ship contained manufacturing systems that could build more vessels, weapons, and equipment using the architect's technology. "You can use this ship to save your species," Oracle told Jack, "but first you must prove yourself worthy of the responsibility." Jack spent days exploring the ship, learning its systems, and talking with Oracle. The AI taught him about the architects' history, their technology, and their philosophy. Jack learned about threats that existed beyond human space, ancient enemies that the architects had fought and barely defeated. When Jack finally returned to the prison, he began secretly recruiting the best people he could find. Helen's scientific knowledge would be crucial for understanding the ship's biotechnology. Luke's military experience would help train crew members. Others brought skills in engineering, communications, and combat. Jack told them he had found something that could change the war against Blake, but he did not reveal the full truth about the ship. That would come later when he was sure they could handle it. Over the following weeks, Jack carefully selected 200 of the most skilled and trustworthy prisoners. He told them he was planning an escape, but his real plan was much bigger. Jack Morrison was no longer just a disgraced admiral planning revenge. He was now the inheritor of technology that could reshape the galaxy. Blake thought he had destroyed Jack by sending him into exile, but he had actually created something far more dangerous. The question was whether Jack could master the architect's legacy before Blake's betrayal destroyed humanity completely. Time was running out, and Jack knew that his daughter and the resistance fighters were counting on him to return and save them. But when Jack Morrison returned to human space, he would not be the same man who had been sent into exile. He would be something far more powerful and far more dangerous than anyone could imagine. Jack Morrison stood in the control room of the Sovereign, watching holographic displays show him the true scope of Blake's betrayal. 3 months had passed since he first discovered the ancient ship, and Oracle had been teaching him things that no human had ever known. The architects had ruled the galaxy for millions of years before humanity even existed. They had built their empire not through conquest but through protection, using their advanced technology to keep peace between countless species. They had faced threats that could destroy entire star systems, enemies that ate planets and turned stars into weapons. The architects faced the same challenge you face now, Oracle explained as images flickered in the air around them. Corruption from within. Leaders who betrayed their own people for personal gain. The difference is that the architects learned to recognize these threats and stop them before they could spread. Jack studied the displays showing Blake's activities. Across human space, the man had been busy during Jack's exile. 7 Outer Rim colonies had fallen to what were reported as pirate attacks, but Jack now knew these were Zephyrian forces working with Blake's approval. Hundreds of thousands of humans had died or been enslaved. "Show me the communications," Jack said. Oracle projected recordings of Blake's secret meetings with Zephyrian commanders. Jack watched with growing disgust as Blake negotiated the sale of human colonies, trading the lives of millions for alien technology and promises of power in the new order. "The Zephyrians are not the real threat," Oracle continued. "They are servants of something far worse. The Devourers' machine intelligences that consume entire civilizations. The architects fought them for 10,000 years before finally transcending to escape them." Jack absorbed this information while continuing to study Blake's network. The corruption went deeper than he had imagined. Blake had placed his supporters in key positions throughout Earth's government and military. He had eliminated or marginalized anyone who might oppose him. The plan was almost complete. "How many ships can the Sovereign build?" Jack asked. "With the manufacturing systems in this vessel, we can produce 1 ship per week. But they will be smaller than the Sovereign, escort vessels and fighters rather than capital ships." "We will need time to build a proper fleet," Jack nodded. Time was something he did not have much of, but he would have to make do with what he could get. Over the following weeks, Jack continued recruiting from the prison population. He had identified the best candidates, people with skills, people with grudges against Blake's regime, people who could be trusted to fight for humanity's survival. Dr. Helen Foster had become his chief science officer, working with Oracle to understand the ship's biotechnology. The Sovereign was not just a machine, it was part living organism able to heal itself and adapt to new threats. Helen's expertise in alien biology made her perfect for understanding how the ship's systems worked. Commander Luke Patterson had taken charge of training the new crew members. The Sovereign systems were unlike anything in human technology, requiring new ways of thinking about space combat and ship operations. Luke's military experience and his anger at Blake's betrayal made him a natural leader for the growing resistance. Force. Jack had also recruited specialists in engineering, communications, weapons, and logistics. Many were former military officers who had been imprisoned for questioning Blake's orders. Others were scientists who had refused to develop weapons for the regime. All of them had reasons to hate Blake and everything he represented. The training was intense. Oracle taught them to interface with the ship's systems using neural connections that allowed them to control weapons and engines with thought alone. The technology was overwhelming at first, but humans proved surprisingly adaptable to the architect's designs. "Your species has the right mental flexibility," Oracle observed. "Many races we have encountered are too rigid in their thinking to use our technology effectively. Humans can learn and adapt faster than most." As Jack's force grew stronger, he received disturbing news from his contacts in human space. Blake was planning something called Operation Clean Sweep, a massive military exercise that would gather most of the remaining loyal officers in Earth's fleet at a single location. Jack's daughter, Lisa, still working with the Resistance, had managed to steal partial information about the operation. It was scheduled to take place in the Titan system, supposedly a training exercise to prepare for future alien threats. But Jack knew better. Blake was planning to eliminate his remaining opposition in one stroke. "The exercise will include over 200 ships and 50,000 personnel," Lisa reported in a coded message. All the officers who have been asking questions about the colony losses. All the ones who still remember what the Defense Force is supposed to stand for. If they all gather in one place. Jack did not need her to finish the thought. Blake would arrange for an accident that would kill all the remaining honest officers in Earth's fleet. With them gone, Blake would have complete control over humanity's military forces. We have to stop this, Jack told Oracle. But we only have one ship against Blake's entire fleet. The Sovereign is more powerful than any vessel in your fleet, Oracle replied. But you are right that one ship cannot be everywhere at once. We need to choose our battles carefully. Jack spent days planning his response. He could not save all of Blake's targets, but he could save some of them. More importantly, he could expose Blake's treachery to the galaxy and give humanity a chance to fight back. The first step was to contact the honest officers before they walked into Blake's trap. Jack used the Sovereign's advanced communication systems to send coded messages to the fleet commanders he knew he could trust. The messages contained evidence of Blake's betrayal and warnings about Operation Clean Sweep. Some of the officers ignored the warnings, thinking they were enemy propaganda, but others remembered Admiral Morrison and the man he had been. They began asking questions, investigating Blake's activities, and quietly preparing for trouble. Captain Noah Fletcher, Jack's old friend, was among those who received the warnings. Noah had been tormented by guilt over his role in Jack's arrest, and the evidence of Blake's corruption gave him a chance for redemption. He began organizing a network of loyal officers who were willing to act when the time came. Meanwhile, Jack continued building his forces. The Sovereign's manufacturing systems had produced 12 smaller vessels, fast attack ships that could outmaneuver anything in the human fleet. Jack's crew had grown to include 300 people, all of them highly skilled and completely loyal to the cause. But Jack knew that ships and crew alone would not be enough. He needed to break Blake's hold on the public imagination to show humanity that their supposed protector was actually their worst enemy. Oracle suggested a different approach. The architects learned that the best way to fight corruption is not with weapons alone, but with truth. Show your people what Blake really is, and they will turn against him. Jack agreed, but he knew that simply broadcasting evidence would not be enough. Blake controlled the media and the government. He could dismiss any accusations as enemy propaganda. Jack needed to catch Blake in the act, to show the galaxy his treachery in a way that could not be denied. The opportunity came when Jack's intelligence network discovered that Blake was planning to meet personally with Zephyrian commanders to finalize the details of Operation Clean Sweep. The meeting would take place on a remote station in the Vega system. Far from Earth's watching eyes, Jack decided to intercept this meeting. He would capture Blake and his alien allies, broadcast their confessions to the entire galaxy, and finally expose the truth about who was really betraying humanity. But as Jack prepared for this mission, Oracle warned him about the dangers he would face. Blake is not just a corrupt human anymore, the AI explained. The Zephyrians have been enhancing him with their technology. He is faster, stronger, and more dangerous than any normal human. And he will have powerful allies with him. Jack nodded grimly. He had expected this fight to be difficult. Blake had taken everything from him, his rank, his reputation, his freedom. Now Blake was trying to destroy humanity itself, but Jack Morrison was no longer the same man who had been betrayed and exiled. He had the power of the architects behind him, technology that could reshape the galaxy, and a crew of dedicated fighters who believed in the cause. The final confrontation was coming, and Jack intended to be ready for it. Blake thought he had won, but he had no idea what he was about to face. The student had become the teacher, and the lesson was going to be painful. 2 years had passed since Jack Morrison disappeared into exile. Now he was coming home, but not as the broken man Blake had expected him to become. The Sovereign dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, its dark hull invisible against the stars until Jack decided to reveal himself. Earth's defense sensors went crazy when they detected the alien ship. Alarms rang throughout the system as military bases scrambled their fighters and warships moved to intercept positions. The ship's design was unlike anything in human records. Smooth, organic-looking, and radiating power signatures that made their instruments go wild. Jack sat in the captain's chair, feeling the ship's systems merge with his thoughts through the neural interface. Oracle's presence was a calm voice in his mind, offering advice and information as needed. Around him, his crew worked at stations that responded to mental commands as much as physical touch. All Earth Defense Force vessels, this is Admiral Jack. Morrison aboard the vessel Sovereign. Jack broadcast on all military frequencies. I have returned to expose the traitor who has been destroying humanity from within. The response was immediate chaos. Some ship captains recognized Jack's voice and began asking questions. Others followed Blake's standing orders to shoot first and ask questions later. The space around Earth became a confused mess of conflicting orders and panicked communications. Blake's voice cut through the noise, broadcasting from Earth Command headquarters. All units, the terrorist calling himself Jack Morrison must be destroyed immediately. He has allied himself with our enemies and threatens the safety of Earth itself. Jack smiled grimly. Blake was playing his part perfectly, showing the galaxy exactly what kind of leader he really was. People of Earth, Jack continued broadcasting, Admiral Blake has been lying to you. He has been selling human colonies to alien invaders in exchange for personal power. I have proof of his betrayal, and I am transmitting it now to every communication network in human space. Jack activated Oracle's transmission systems, sending terabytes of data to every news network, military base, and government facility within range. The evidence was overwhelming: recorded conversations between Blake and Zephyrian commanders, financial records showing alien payments, classified documents detailing the planned surrender of human worlds. But Blake had prepared for this possibility. Within minutes, government censors were blocking the transmissions and declaring them enemy propaganda. Blake's supporters in the media were already spinning the story, calling Jack a deluded terrorist who had been brainwashed by aliens. It will not be enough, Oracle warned Jack. Blake controls too much of the information network. People will not believe evidence alone, Jack nodded. He had expected this. Blake was too smart and too well prepared to be defeated by simple revelation. Jack would have to prove his case in a way that could not be denied or covered up. The first test came when 3 Earth Defense Force battle groups moved to surround the Sovereign. Over 100 ships, including heavy cruisers and the massive Dreadnought UES Redemption, formed a defensive sphere around Jack's position. Admiral Morrison, this is Captain Stevens aboard the Redemption, came a transmission. You will surrender immediately or we will open fire. Jack recognized Stevens as one of Blake's supporters, a man who had advanced rapidly through the ranks by following orders without question. Stevens was exactly the kind of officer Blake preferred: loyal, unimaginative, and willing to do anything for promotion. Captain Stevens, I do not wish to fight fellow humans, Jack replied, but I will defend myself if attacked. Stevens' response was to order all ships to open fire. What happened next became known as the Miracle of Soul. The Sovereign's hull began to change as hundreds of energy beams and missiles struck it. The dark metal flowed like liquid, hardening where it was hit and absorbing the energy of the attacks. Within seconds, the ship had adapted to every weapon being used against it. Jack did not want to kill his fellow humans, even the ones who were following Blake's orders. Instead, he used the Sovereign's advanced weapons to disable rather than destroy. Precision energy beams cut through engine systems, leaving ships stranded but intact. Electromagnetic pulses knocked out weapons and communications without harming the battle was completely one-sided. Ships that had been built with the best human technology were helpless against architect engineering. Jack moved through the Earth Defense Force fleet like a shark among minnows, disabling vessel after vessel while broadcasting continuous messages explaining Blake's betrayal. As the battle continued, something remarkable began to happen. Ship captains who had known Jack personally started to remember the man he had been. They began to question their orders, to wonder why they were attacking the hero who had saved humanity so many times before. Captain Noah Fletcher was among the first to change sides. Noah had been tormented by guilt over his role in Jack's arrest, and seeing his friend again brought all those feelings rushing back. When Jack's weapons disabled the Guardian's engines without harming the crew, Noah realized that the real Jack Morrison would never have become a terrorist. "All ships, this is Captain Fletcher," Noah broadcast on the fleet communication channel. "Admiral Morrison just disabled my vessel without harming a single crew member. A terrorist would have killed us all. I am standing down and requesting permission to speak with Admiral Morrison." Noah's defection started a chain reaction. Other captains who had served with Jack began to remember his character, his dedication to protecting human life, his refusal to use unnecessary violence. One by one, they began to stand down rather than continue the attack, but Blake was not finished. As Jack's support grew among the fleet, long-range sensors detected new contacts jumping into the system. Massive alien ships with the distinctive design of the Zephyrian Collective were arriving in force. Blake's voice came over the communication channels, but this time he was not speaking to his own people. He was talking to the alien commanders, giving them tactical information about Earth's defenses and coordinating their attack. "The traitor Morrison has disrupted our schedule," Blake told the Zephyrian fleet commander, "but proceed with the operation as planned. Earth's defenses are weakened and confused. This is the perfect time to strike." The alien fleet was massive, over 300 ships including vessels larger than anything in the human fleet. They had come to conquer Earth while Blake's supposed military exercise had most of the loyal officers trapped in the Titan system. Jack felt cold fury fill him as he realized the full scope of Blake's betrayal. The man had not just sold individual colonies to the aliens, he had been planning to hand over Earth itself. "All human vessels, this is Admiral Morrison," Jack broadcast on all frequencies. "The alien fleet you see before you is here because Blake invited them. They have come to conquer our homeworld while our defenders are away. Will you fight beside a traitor or will you defend humanity?" The response was immediate and overwhelming. Ship after ship declared for Jack, their captains finally understanding that they had been following the wrong leader. Even some of Blake's closest supporters began to waver as they saw the evidence of his ultimate betrayal, but the Zephyrian fleet was already moving toward Earth, their weapons charging for a devastating first strike. Jack knew that the converted human ships alone could not stop such a massive force. It was time to show the galaxy what architect technology could really do. Jack merged his consciousness more fully with the sovereign systems, feeling the ship's power flow through him like lightning. The vessel's weapons, designed by beings who had fought galaxy-spanning wars, came online with power that made human weapons look like toys. "Oracle, show them what the architects created," Jack said quietly. The Sovereign's main weapon fired once. A beam of pure energy, controlled and focused by technology beyond human understanding, struck the lead Zephyrian dreadnought. The massive alien ship simply ceased to exist, its atoms scattered across space in an instant. Jack fired again and again. Each shot destroyed an enemy vessel completely, leaving no debris, no survivors, no trace that the ship had ever existed. In less than 10 minutes, Jack had destroyed over 50 Zephyrian ships while the rest of their fleet watched in horror. The alien commander tried to retreat, but Jack was not finished with them. The Sovereign moved faster than should have been possible, appearing next to fleeing ships and destroying them before they could escape. The slaughter was methodical and complete. When it was over, the space around Earth was filled with human ships flying in formation around the Sovereign. Not a single Zephyrian vessel remained intact. Blake's alien allies had been completely annihilated, and his betrayal was exposed for all to see. Jack Morrison had returned, and he was indeed stronger than anyone had feared. The trials of Blake and his conspirators lasted 3 months and were broadcast live across human space. Jack Morrison sat in the witness chair, no longer wearing the simple clothes of a prisoner, but the new uniform of the Guardian Corps, the elite force he had created to protect humanity from future betrayals. Blake himself looked small and broken in the defendant's chair. The man who had once commanded Earth's entire fleet now faced charges of treason, conspiracy, and crimes against humanity. The evidence against him was overwhelming, presented not just by Jack but by dozens of officers who had finally found the courage to speak the truth. "Admiral Blake," the chief prosecutor said, "you stand accused of selling classified military information to enemy forces. How do you plead?" Blake's voice was barely a whisper. "Guilty." "You are accused of arranging the deaths of loyal officers to consolidate your power." "How do you plead?" "Guilty." "You are accused of collaborating with alien forces to plan the conquest of Earth itself." "How do you plead?" Blake looked directly at Jack for the first time during the trial. His eyes were filled with hatred and fear. "Guilty." Jack felt no satisfaction in Blake's downfall. Too many people had died because of the man's betrayal. Too many families had been destroyed. Blake's guilt could not bring back the hundreds of thousands who had perished in the colony. Attacks or the loyal officers who had been eliminated for asking the wrong questions. The court sentenced Blake to life imprisonment on the same mining world where Jack had been exiled. It seemed fitting that Blake would spend his remaining years in the place where Jack had discovered the power to destroy him, but Jack's transformation went far beyond simple revenge. The architect technology had changed him in ways that were only now becoming clear. His mind processed information faster than any human ever could. He could see patterns and connections that others missed completely. He could interface directly with advanced computer systems using only his thoughts. More importantly, the technology had connected him to a vast network of ancient knowledge that spanned the galaxy. Oracle was no longer just the AI of a single ship. It was Jack's direct link to the accumulated wisdom of beings who had ruled among the stars for millions of years. Jack used this knowledge to reshape human civilization. He disbanded the corrupt Earth Defense Force and replaced it with the new Terran Republic, a government designed to prevent the kind of corruption that had nearly destroyed humanity. Power was distributed among multiple branches with built-in safeguards to prevent any single person from gaining too much control. The Guardian Corps became the military arm of the new government, but it was unlike any military force that had existed before. Guardian officers swore their oaths not to any leader or government, but to humanity itself. They were trained aboard ships built with architect technology and were incorruptible in ways that went beyond simple loyalty. "The Guardians are not just soldiers," Jack explained to the new government assembly. "They are living connections to the architect network. Any attempt to corrupt them or turn them against their oath will be detected immediately." Dr. Helen Foster led the scientific revolution that followed Jack's return. Using architect biotechnology, human scientists began developing improvements that enhanced human capabilities without destroying their essential nature. People could live longer, think faster, and resist diseases that had plagued humanity for centuries. But the improvements came with safeguards. Jack had learned from the architect's history that unlimited enhancement could lead to the loss of what made a species unique. Humans would become better, but they would remain human. Commander Luke Patterson became the head of the new Guardian Academy, training officers in both conventional tactics and the advanced strategies needed to use architect technology. The academy was built on the moon, far from Earth's political influence, and operated according to principles that Jack had learned from Oracle. "We are not training soldiers," Luke told his first class of recruits. "We are training guardians of humanity's future. You will be stronger, smarter, and more capable than any human who came before you. But you will also carry the responsibility to use that power wisely." Jack's daughter Lisa emerged from hiding to join the new diplomatic corps. The resistance movement that had sheltered her during Blake's reign became the foundation for a new intelligence service that monitored threats both within and outside human space. "Father, you've changed," Lisa told Jack during one of their private meetings. "You're still the man who raised me, but there's something else there now, something ancient and powerful." Jack nodded. "The architect technology doesn't just give us better weapons and faster ships. It connects us to a way of thinking that spans millions of years. I can see threats and opportunities that would have been invisible to me before." But the greatest change was in humanity's position among the galactic community. The destruction of the Zephyrian fleet had announced to every alien civilization that humans were no longer the weak newcomers they had once been. Species that had barely acknowledged humanity's existence now sent ambassadors to Earth, seeking trade agreements and military alliances. The Krillian Empire, which had been preparing for their own invasion of human space, suddenly found themselves offering peace treaties instead. The Andorian Collective, which had been enslaving human colonists for decades, released their prisoners and begged for forgiveness, but Jack knew that these victories were only the beginning. Oracle had warned him about the real threat that was coming: the Devourers, ancient machine intelligences that consumed entire civilizations. The Zephyrians had been just servants of these creatures, scouts preparing the way for a much larger invasion. The Devourers will come eventually, Oracle explained to Jack as they stood on the bridge of the Sovereign, looking out at Earth's rebuilt orbital defenses. They have been moving through this galaxy for millions of years, consuming everything in their path. The architects fought them for 10,000 years before finally transcending to escape them. Jack studied the tactical displays showing the locations of known Devourer fleets. They were still thousands of light years away, but they were moving steadily toward human space. Humanity might have decades to prepare, or they might have only years. "Are we strong enough to fight them?" Jack asked. "Not yet," Oracle admitted. "But you have something the architects lacked when they first faced this threat. You have the ability to unite other species under a common cause." The architects were too proud to seek help from younger races. Humanity may be wiser. Jack began building alliances with other species, sharing architect technology in exchange for their commitment to fight against the coming threat. The galaxy began to organize itself around the principle that had made the architects great: protection of the innocent, and resistance to those who would destroy life itself. As Jack stood in his new office, overlooking the rebuilt Earth Command, he reflected on how far he had come. Blake's betrayal had been meant to destroy him, but it had instead forged him into something far greater than he had ever imagined possible. The man who had once simply defended humanity now guided its evolution into a galactic power. The soldier, who had been betrayed by his own government, had become the architect of a new civilization. The exile, who had been sent to die on a mining world, had returned with the power to reshape the galaxy, Oracle's voice whispered in his mind, carrying the wisdom of millions of years. The student has become the teacher. The betrayed has become the protector of all who are innocent. The shield has become the sword that defends the light against the darkness. Jack smiled as he looked out at the stars. Humanity had been betrayed by its own leaders, but that betrayal had created something stronger than anyone had feared. The Devourers would come eventually, but they would find humanity ready for them. They would find Jack Morrison waiting, and he had become something far more than human. He had become humanity's future and the galaxy's best hope for survival against the ancient darkness that was coming to destroy them all. The war was far from over, but for the first time in millions of years, the forces of light had a chance to win. And that chance had a name: Jack Morrison, Admiral of the Guardian Corps, inheritor of the Architect legacy, and the man who had returned stronger than anyone feared.